In this tutorial, we'll be looking at quickly getting you started with the IP suite of software. So whether that be school IP, college IP, university IP, or Alto, getting started is the same across all the systems. So the first thing that will happen is we'll be sent a plan, a getting started plan. And in that plan, there's details of your subscription. So whether you're 1 year, 3 year, whether you've got MIS integration, whether you've agreed to on-site training. Next thing we need to know is about the rationale, the context of your organization, the size. Normally what actually happens is organizations just might copy the context section from their CEF. We want to know the reasons for you to subscribe to the IP. We want to know about what functionality you wish to use. So the idea is, do you want to use it all, or are you going to plan the steps in measurable timeframes? What outcome? How are you going to judge success? What is going to be your dream team? Which of the members are going to be part of this team to actually launch IP in your organization? The decision makers, the influencers, the drivers. You'll be shared some logins. So that's a login to your own site, plus a login to our training system to allow you to explore the functionality. And finally, at the bottom of the plan, there's some useful resources to help you understand more. So with the login that's provided, you'll be able to access your system. So when you log on to your system, this will be what you'll see for the first time. So it might be that you've got a lot of staff in here because it's linked to your MIS system, or it might be that you've only got one member of staff, yourself, actually here. So the first thing we need to do is actually set up your staff. So by coming into users and settings, so these two here are for admin access anyway, and you'll be given this. So what actually happens is you click on users, and we come to this window here, and we're going to concentrate on staff members. So this will be a list of your staff. So again, as we've mentioned before, you might have a number of staff in here because you've been linked to your MIS system, or it might be that you've only got one member of staff. So I'm just going to focus on one member of staff here. I'm going to click on the edit pencil and show you how to set up your staff. So normally we have the email of your organization, and your email within the organization we keep the same as the login name. And the reason we do that is people have a tendency to remember that. Next is the surname, first name, and initials. We recommend that using some of the functionalities linked to initials, that you start to think about initials being more than 2. So small organizations, it's fine. But in large organizations, there might be duplicate, and you might have the wrong person being assigned the wrong activity. The next element in here that we need to actually quickly get started is reports to, i.e. the line manager, user rights, and user rights are linked to what people can see in the system. So for example, a teacher is only able to see their own area and nobody else is, whereas if you happen to be on the leadership, you're able to see a lot more of the functionality. So click on the drop down here, you'll see that we've got teaching staff and support staff. They have the basic access right. Middle leader, equivalent to your head of department. Leadership team, your SLT. Head teacher, and initially administrator. In most cases, to get you quickly getting started, it might be just support staff and teaching staff and use administrator. The others we can refine at a later date. What I next need to know to get us quickly getting started is the idea up here of staff member type. And this staff member type is what we're going to attach things to. So again, we don't have to use all these. When I mean about attaching things, it means like if you intend to use standards. So for example, teacher standards. So what actually happens is we just go along and assign main scale teacher, and we can then link the standards to it. So again, to get things quickly working, it might be that you're just going to use something like main scale teachers, teaching assistants, and leadership, because we can refine it at a later date. Once you've done it, click Save. Now, looking at it, that seems a very manual way of doing things and gradually going in, because what actually happens is you can go in here and add every solitary one, but there is a quicker way. So by coming into staff members, you can see here there's an export button. So by clicking on the export button and choosing the fourth option down, what actually happens is when you click export, you'll export it onto a spreadsheet. You'll be able to populate that spreadsheet. And then what actually happens is, comes to the top, and there's a what next button. And with that, import users. So you choose your spreadsheet, you click validate to check it. If it's all okay, you import. And with that, you'll then be able to put all your staff more or less to get started in the right place with their name, their reports to, and their rights. You can start populating with other information, but we're talking about quickly getting you started using the system. So the next thing we need to know is what you actually want to use in the system. So if I just come back to home here, and I come to my staff, what I'm going to show now is for you just to decide what you want to use. So the idea is we're just going to concentrate on a particular member of staff. So you can see from here, we have different functions that we possibly want to use. So are we going to use it for appraisal? Are we going to use it for monitoring? Are we going to use it for standards? Are we going to use it for CPD? And that then goes back to the plan about what you intend using and when. So if you intend using it for appraisal, do you wish to have it that your line managers actually come into here and add their own objective? Or is it that you want to have some scaffolding objectives? If so, that's something you just need to think about, because by putting the scaffolding objectives in place, you end up providing some basis for quality assurance that everyone is more or less writing the same objective. Do you intend using monitoring? If so, the idea of knowing what form you wish to use and the outcome of those forms. And we'll talk about outcomes in a minute. So from a leadership perspective, we normally start with the outcomes and work backwards. Do you wish some standards to be in place? So what standards do you presently use? And possibly what standards do you wish to use in the future? So do you wish to use normal teacher standards? Do you wish to modify the teaching standards? Do you wish to use UPS standards? Do you wish to use head teacher standards? And for example, the head teacher standards, do you want those just to be applied to head teacher or to deputies? These are all questions that you just need to think about so we can build around the system to meet your needs. So with that, we're more or less now thinking about building the system. So previously we talked about looking at the outcomes. So what I mean about the outcomes, if I come to my reports here, one of the outcomes would be ability to look at monitoring. So if I click on monitoring, we're able to see a record of monitoring that's taken place. So the idea of just thinking about what we actually want to put in place. So your monitoring, for example, could be that you just wanted to put the idea of words in there. But we're talking about creating a system where it does the work for you. So if I just happen to just change these dates, search, we'll be able to get a record of previous monitoring that's taken place in the system. So the idea is you'll have all this monitoring that you'll gradually build up over time, and then you'll be able to filter accordingly. Now, the outcome means the data. So for example, do your forms just going to contain a whole load of comments? Which someone is going to have to look through? Or is it that you prefer it to more or less contain, by choosing a particular form, for example, here, so you wish it to actually produce you some data? So we're not talking about grading lessons. What we're talking about is rating things that get the biggest outcome. So if I now just happen to show you a particular form, and there are some default ones in your system anyway, okay? So as you can see from here, we've got our forms, and if I look at the overview, we'll have a record here of the forms. So this is just an example of one that might possibly be in the system. So if I click on this one here, so what actually happens is you'll be able to see that the forms allow you then to just rate certain things. So the next thing is standards. So for example, if I click on standards here, these are all the present standards that are in the system. So again, just changing the code, the dates, to allow me to filter the right information. I now get a record of all the standards in the system, which I can now refine. So for example here, if I click on standard type, you can see presently in here we have head teacher standards, we have governor standards, we have HR standards, support staff standards, teaching assistant teaching standards. So the idea is thinking about what standards you want to put in place. So we have various other tutorials about how to add monitoring, how to add standards, but it's all about just reflecting what you want to build up from the system. The same as, looking at that, the CPD function. Do we wish to start using the CPD in here? So again, the functions are here for you to use. Is that a priority moving forward? School development plan. Again, there's tutorials on that will help you with the school development plan. And the CEF. So it's about knowing what to achieve, and then we work with you to actually build the system. So your first priority is about going into here, into users, and adding the staff to the system, because adding the staff correctly, that's what everything else attaches to. So thank you very much for watching the tutorial on getting started with the IP system.